What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Another jersey from football. So, as always, traditionally, let me know down below in the comments from which team is this one. Now we'll get back to the video. When gangsters start crying about protocols, you know something broke. 2 days ago, a businessman was stolen by Kadyrov's goons in broad daylight, right in the middle of Moscow. Government plates, flashing blue lights, black-tinted SUV, crowds watching, and no one stepped in. Not the police, not security, not even bystanders, who just barely bothered to call emergency services and leave an anonymous tip that something is happening right in the middle of Moscow. Because everyone knew exactly who they were dealing with, the infamous Kadyrovцы. But here's the twist. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, they did not get away with it. This is not just a random case of street thuggery, it's a sign of something much bigger. The warlord of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, is no longer untouchable. And today, we are going to rip apart the illusion of his invincibility, piece by piece, talk about his immunity being revoked, and the very much expected arrest of Chechens across Russia. What used to be a feared empire is now falling apart under its own weight. Because no empires stay forever. Eric Shepikin was not some opposition leader or a loud critic. He was a businessman. Well, that did not matter. The Kadyrovцы, without warning, without paperwork, grabbed him like it was still 1990s, dragged him out in Moscow train station and stuffed him into the government SUV. No questions, no hesitation, and this was not about legal protocol or due process. It was intimidation, plain and simple. It was also arrogance. An old script running out on a dated confidence. These guys thought the streets of Moscow still work like Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, 30 years ago. But something had changed. If you think about it, a lot, actually. So, what was different this time? Moscow's traffic police actually pulled them over on a city highway in a car with government plates and blue flashing lights. That moment alone was enough to signal that something was seriously wrong in the ecosystem of power. These were not the days of absolute impunity anymore. Not in the capital. Not when people are watching. Not when the FSB has stopped pretending they do not care. And not only was Shepikin pulled out of the car alive, he was released. That is the real headline. Just a few years ago, this would have ended completely different, with his family being told to keep their mouths shut, with a photo of his body circulating in Telegram channels. But this time, the investigative committee opened a case. Criminal charges, arrests, public outrage. Something finally shifted. For the first time, the Kadyrovцы ran out of script. No one cleaned it up, no one silenced the press, it did not vanish, instead it escalated. Of course, they tried to spin it. The Chechen authorities released a statement claiming Shepikin had committed religious hate speech, as if that would justify an abduction carried out in the middle of Moscow by men in tactical gear. But okay. But nobody bought it, obviously, especially after it came out that his so-called arrest was never coordinated with Moscow police, never logged in official databases, and that the suspect was released within hours. That was not just procedural chaos. That was a crack in the foundation of Kadyrov's world of power and influence. But this story was not just about a single incident. It was about everything that followed. The tape, the panic, the rage, and the unmistakable sound of the crumbling empire. Because when even low-level law enforcement agents stop looking the other way, when mid-ranking investigators dare to question who sits behind tinted windows, when someone in the FSB decides to publish the ugliest phone call in the history of post-Soviet impunity, you know the beast finally started to bleed. This is the beginning of an end for Kadyrov. It was long coming, and now it's here. His complete disappearance from the media was just the first step. Think about the last time you heard any news about him. That's right. For a very long time, at least. Now we are witnessing the grand escalation of his collapse with his immunity being revoked. Let's talk about it right now. Ramzan Kadyrov used to be a boogeyman wrapped in Gucci. You did not say his name out loud unless you wanted to wake up in a different zip code. He was the face of Putin's brutal peace with Chechnya. a loyal mad dog with a private army, a flashy Instagram, notorious TikTok, and a license to do whatever he wanted. He kidnapped critics, he beat people in the streets, he installed his people in cities across entire Russia like mafia franchises. For years, no one touched him. He ran his own justice system. He ruled like a medieval warlord with a smartphone. His enemies disappeared, his rivals kept quiet, and every federal official pretended it was all just business as usual. Because Kadyrov was not just feared, he was useful. He was Putin's success story. The Chechen who finally crushed the insurgents, the loyal brute who made Grozny peaceful again. Not great again, but just peaceful. The walking proved that an iron-fisted terror could bring order, and then came the losses. First, the disaster over Wildberries, this online platform. Kadyrov chose a side in a business feud, tried to flex his muscles, send his goons, and then eventually got humiliated. He did not just lose face, he lost power. Real, material, institutional power. The kind that makes men like him dangerous. And when Suleiman Kerimov outplayed him, it was not just a corporate slapdown. It was a statement. Kadyrov is no longer the top predator on the top of food chain. Next came the Wagner mutiny. Kadyrov's troops, those heavily armed TikTok influencers, they got quote-unquote stuck in traffic, literally. While Prigozhin's convicts were driving towards Moscow like Mad Max extras. And well, then Kadyrov's army was nowhere to be seen, even though Putin most likely asked him personally to solve the problem. That moment sealed it. Whatever image remained of the Chechen strongman as a reliable enforcer dissolved overnight. He became irrelevant, decorative. The guy you put on posters but never actually call when something breaks. And Putin realized that the image of strong Kadyrov is nothing more than an image that Putin himself created and then believed in. What about now? Kadyrov looks bloated, tired, absent. Even his threats feel hollow, like he's performing a version of himself that no one buys anymore. As long as he even makes social media appearance, obviously. Well, he used to be feared, now he's just tolerated at best, for now. The only people who still jump at his commands are the ones on his payroll, and even they are starting to notice that the paychecks are getting smaller, and that the backing is not coming from the top like it used to be. It's not official yet, but Kadyrov's immunity is being revoked. Now he has to be careful about what he says and what he does, just like his enemies in the past. Finally, Kadyrov tastes his own medicine. So, how did it exactly happen? How is it all related to Shepikin being taken by Kadyrov's men? Let's talk about it in our next chapter. After the abduction, the real explosion came from a speakerphone. A recording surfaced online, a leaked call, and it was not just anyone speaking, it was Adam Delimkhanov, one of the dirtiest players in the game, a sitting member of the Russian parliament, by the way, Kadyrov's right hand. The guy who manages kidnappings like someone else manages catering orders. And what did he do? He panicked. Full-scale meltdown mode panic. F-bombs flew like bullets. He raged about how the cops ruined the plan, how the FSB did not play along, how the operation was sabotaged. It was not a criminal genius, it was chaos. A mafia lieutenant losing his grip and accidentally broadcasting it to the entire world. What's important is not just what he said, is that he said it, that it got leaked, and that nobody stopped it. Because let's be honest, only the FSB could have done it. And they only do things like this when the signal comes from the very top, from the high up. Either Putin himself green-lighted it, or the FSB knew he would not mind. That's how these things work in Russia. Accidents do not happen, not when it comes to powerful men like this. What was the content of the call? Horrifying and hilarious, I guess, at the same time. Delimkhanov talks like a gangster who's been stood up on his own heist. He barks about extremists, complains about paperwork, insults his own allies. It's like Sopranos episode if it was written by interns and broadcast live on federal channels in the prime time. But make no mistake, the very fact this was leaked and that it was treated like a legitimate news marks the end of the era. These are not rogue units anymore. These are pariahs being sacrificed. And let's be real here, if Delimkhanov gets exposed this way, what does it say about Kadyrov's control? What kind of empire is it if your own second-in-command cannot even organize a crime without getting turned into a viral meme? What kind of power do you hold if Moscow's common traffic police feel confident enough to stop your convoy and hand it over to investigators? These are some very rather good questions, right? So, what changed? Why is the man who once owned the streets of Moscow now begging for backup? Theory number 1, he is dying, he is a mortal man. And no, that's not a metaphor. Kadyrov's health has been in question for years. Rumors of kidney failure, cancer, even comas. And judging by his occasional bloated face and sudden disappearances from public events, it does not take a medical degree to spot this decline.
The health of the leader of the Chechen Republic, Ramzan Kadyrov, is deteriorating. This has accelerated the process of transferring power to his heir. This was reported by Novaya Gazeta Evropa. According to the publication, Kadyrov has accepted the doctor's diagnosis and has begun preparing his successor.
And when a warlord begins to fade, in this case quite literally, his empire does not politely wait for the funeral. It starts eating itself and people start simply fight for power. That's how these regimes work. Everyone smiles to your face while sharpening their knives behind their backs. Theory number 2, he has outlived his usefulness. Kadyrov was never respected. He was feared, yes, and he was used. He was a tool, a loud, brutal, effective one, sure, but a tool nonetheless. And tools get discarded once they lose their sharpness. Once his army became a TikTok meme, once his loyalty became a liability, once he started embarrassing the regime instead of defending it, well, the writing was simply on the wall, it was just a matter of time. Putin does not need wildcards. He needs stability, predictability and obedience. Kadyrov offers none of those things anymore. And what happens when a dictator loses his grip? Look around, his people get arrested, his calls get leaked, his immunity vanishes, his enemies smell blood. What used to be a kingdom turns into a courtroom. The system he helped build, the one he exploited, brutalized and bent to his will eventually, is now turning on him. Slowly, methodically, relentlessly. But it does it every single day. All of this is happening in real time. It's not a future event. It's not theoretical. It's happening right now as we speak. The unraveling has already begun. His image, his allies, his empire, it's all cracking like old glass. Every humiliation is a nail in the coffin, and the hands holding the hammer, well, they used to be Kadyrov's own hands. So he just funerals himself, I guess, at this point. Well, there you have it, guys. Please don't forget about another episode of Thank God It's Monday podcast, which is going to be uploaded, you guessed it, on Monday. And this time it is you guys interviewing me. So if you don't want to miss it, please subscribe to my channel, turn on the notifications. If you want to support my work, there are links down below. For example, Patreon, where you will be able to see those episodes in early access. Thanks so much for watching, and see you on Monday.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.